Have you ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back? Not because you've changed, but because you've survived so many versions of yourself, you're not sure which one is still breathing. When I was 9, I climbed a tree in my neighbor's yard and refused to come down. Not because I was being stubborn, not because I was acting out, but because it felt like the only place I could breathe. There was something about being up there, above it all, watching the world from a branch that swayed with every whisper of wind. No one was correcting me. No one was watching to see if I was appropriate. No one cared if I was too loud, too messy, too much. And for those few moments, I remembered who I really was. I stayed in that tree until the sun began to dip. And when my mother finally came outside, she stood at the bottom and said, "Calm down. Stop being difficult." But I wasn't being difficult. I was being me. The truth is, I was that kid who felt everything. I cried when other people cried. I asked too many questions. I was curious and wild and soft in a world that didn't always know what to do with softness. I didn't know how to shut it off. I didn't know how to filter what I felt. I only knew how to be. But little by little, the world taught me something different. It taught me that good girls didn't interrupt, that crying made people uncomfortable, that you don't ask why people are hurting, you just stay quiet and move on. And so I did. I started trading authenticity for approval, truth for comfort, curiosity for compliance. Not all at once, but piece by piece. That's how it happens, right? It's not a sudden betrayal of self. It's subtle. It's slow. It's the moment you get praised for staying quiet even though your heart was screaming. It's the moment you get rewarded for shrinking yourself to make someone else feel bigger. It's when someone calls you mature, because you've learned how to hide your disappointment behind a polite smile. Psychologists call this conditional regard, learning that love and safety are earned through behavior, not given freely. So we start performing. We stop playing. We become acceptable instead of authentic. And somewhere along the way, we forget the little girl who just wanted to sit in a tree and feel the wind in her lungs. I miss her. Not because she was better, but because she was true. She hadn't been edited yet. She hadn't learned to fold herself into shapes that made others comfortable. She hadn't confused being liked with being loved. And maybe that's what growing up is, learning how to find your way back to the you that existed before the world told you who to be, before perfection, before performance, before praise became a currency. Because here's what I know now. Some of the most profound healing doesn't come from becoming someone new. It comes from remembering the parts of yourself you had to abandon just to survive. That little girl, she's still in there, waiting, patient, braver than I ever gave her credit for. And every time I choose truth over approval, every time I say what I mean, every time I let myself feel without shame, I take one step closer to her. When I was 16, I mastered the art of disappearing without ever leaving the room. I learned how to speak in sarcasm so people wouldn't notice how scared I was. I laughed at things that broke my heart, rolled my eyes at feelings that were too heavy, and made people laugh because it was easier than telling them I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. Not even in my own skin. The truth is, I became someone I wasn't, because who I really was didn't feel safe anymore. There had been too many times I showed up as myself and it went badly. Too many moments I was honest and it was used against me. Too many rooms where my tenderness was seen as weakness, my depth as drama, my silence as something to fill with noise I didn't ask for, so I adapted. I stopped crying where people could see. I stopped asking for comfort because the answers came back empty or uncomfortable. I became the funny one, the smart one, the emotionally detached one. I kept everything light. I stayed one step ahead of rejection by rejecting my own needs first. On the outside, I looked fine, high functioning, well adjusted. But inside, I was exhausted. I couldn't tell you how to name what I was feeling because I had locked so many emotions away in order to keep functioning. I didn't have words for the loneliness that crept in after every interaction where I wore the mask too long. I didn't know how to say, I need someone to see me and not turn away. It took me years to realize that what I was doing had a name. Psychologists call it protective self-construction, a survival strategy where we shape ourselves into the version most likely to avoid harm. We do it when we grow up in environments where vulnerability isn't safe, where sensitivity gets punished, or where truth is met with distance. We create these identities, these roles, because we had to. They kept us afloat. But here's the problem: what protects you at 16 may imprison you at 30. That safe version of me, she couldn't have real connection because real connection requires truth. She couldn't let anyone all the way in because walls don't just keep people out, they keep you in. And she couldn't rest because staying safe meant staying alert at all times. Eventually, I hit a wall. I was in a relationship where I realized this person loves me, but they don't know me. Not because they aren't trying, but because I haven't let them. Because I'm still leading with the version of me I built in high school to survive. And in that moment, I had to ask myself, do I want to be safe or do I want to be seen? That's a terrifying question, because being seen means risking rejection. It means pulling down the mask and saying, this is me. Not the filtered version, not the polished one, just me. But here's the truth I came to: what we build to protect ourselves can become the very thing that isolates us. And if we want real love, real belonging, real healing, we have to risk being real. So I've been slowly letting that version go. Not with shame, not with resentment, with gratitude. Because she got me through some dark nights. She kept me afloat in rooms where no one knew how to hold space for the full weight of who I was. But I don't need her as much anymore. Now I'm learning how to show up soft, to cry without apologizing, to say, that hurt, and not flinch, to be held instead of hiding. And every time I choose to be seen instead of safe, I find a deeper kind of safety. The kind that doesn't come from performing. The kind that only comes from being known. There was a season in my life where I checked every box. I was dependable, put together, grateful, pleasant. I was the one people called when they needed advice, support, or stability. I smiled in the hallway, showed up on time, remembered birthdays, packed lunches, planned meetings, and said yes far more often than I wanted to. And to everyone else, it looked like I was thriving. But inside, I was quietly falling apart. The truth was, I had become a master of emotional multitasking, carrying grief while cooking dinner, holding anxiety while taking phone calls, swallowing disappointment with a smile so sweet even I started to believe it. I kept thinking, if I can just do it all right, maybe I'll finally feel okay. If I'm good enough, kind enough, available enough, maybe that ache in my chest will finally go quiet. Maybe the sadness won't follow me into bed. Maybe I'll stop feeling like I'm failing at something no one can quite name. But the more I performed perfection, the more invisible I became. The more competent I appeared, the lonelier I felt. Because no one thinks to check on the woman who never breaks. No one suspects the strong one is secretly unraveling. Psychologically, it's called role entrapment. We become so entangled in the image of being the responsible one, the caretaker, the achiever, that we forget we're allowed to have needs of our own. We forget we were never meant to be everything to everyone. We forget that being reliable doesn't mean being invulnerable. I remember sitting in my car one day after work. I hadn't even started the engine. I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, and thought, is this what my life is going to be? Just holding everything together until I disappear? It wasn't a crisis. It wasn't loud. It was a quiet heartbreak, realizing I had built a life that looked perfect from the outside, but didn't include room for me on the inside. And here's what made it harder. Everyone around me was so grateful for who I was. They loved how available I was, how dependable, how capable. They just didn't realize they were loving the version of me that was slowly burning out. And I didn't know how to say no, because I was afraid that if I stopped being useful, I'd stop being loved. That belief runs deep, especially for women. We're often raised to believe that our worth is measured by how selfless we are. That being a good woman means sacrificing your own needs in service of everyone else's. We don't call it what it is, we call it being nurturing, being kind, being strong. But here's the raw truth. When we abandon ourselves in the name of doing everything right, we don't become more loved, we just become more exhausted. And eventually, our bodies, our hearts, and our spirits will demand honesty. Mine did, in the form of sleepless nights, in the tears that came out of nowhere, in the feeling that I was living someone else's life like I had memorized a script for a role I no longer wanted to play. So I started small. One quiet no. One honest answer when someone asked how I was. One conversation where I said, "I can't carry that for you today." And the world didn't end. In fact, something else began, something more true. Now, I'm learning to show up as a woman who no longer needs to do everything right, because she finally believes that she is enough without the performance. I'm not less kind. I'm not less giving. But now I give from a full heart, not an empty shell. I love from a place of truth, not obligation. And I rest, because I finally believe I'm allowed to. And maybe that's the greatest form of rebellion in a world that praises performance to be real, to be whole, to be at peace, even when you're not pleasing everyone. There was a night, I remember it vividly, when I sat on the bathroom floor with the lights off, the door locked, and my back against the cold tile wall. Not because something catastrophic had happened, but because nothing had changed for too long. And that stillness, that sameness, that haunting repetition of days that felt like carbon copies of each other, it broke something inside me. People think rock bottom is dramatic. They imagine screaming, breaking things, gasping for air. But sometimes rock bottom is silence. It's brushing your teeth with numb hands. It's answering, "I'm fine." So often you start to forget what fine even means. It's lying in bed wondering if your life actually belongs to you or if you just stumbled into it and got too tired to change course. No one knew I was struggling. Not really. I was still showing up, still replying to messages, still laughing at the right times. But inside it felt like my soul was folding in on itself. I kept telling myself, "You have no right to feel this way. Other people have it worse. Be grateful. Keep going." That's the thing about pain we can't explain. It gets buried under shame. We don't feel entitled to our own suffering unless it fits a narrative people understand. So we silence it. Psychologists sometimes call this chronic low-level depression or functional despair. It's not always visible. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It tells you to keep quiet, to keep performing. Because if you stop, if you fall apart, you might never get back up. That night, I didn't have a breakdown. I didn't have some spiritual awakening. I just sat there, completely still, and whispered to the darkness, "I can't live like this anymore." And that was the moment everything began to shift. Not because I had a plan. Not because I suddenly found clarity, but because I told the truth. Not to anyone else, just to myself. And that was enough to crack something open. Because the thing is, we can't heal from what we won't name. We can't move through pain we keep denying. And we certainly can't come alive in lives that don't make space for us to exist. So I started with the tiniest rebellion I could manage. I let myself feel everything. I cried while doing the dishes. I took longer showers just to sit on the floor and breathe. I canceled plans and didn't explain myself. I began choosing silence over performance, rest over proving, softness over strength. And slowly, so slowly, I came back to life. Not in a movie scene kind of way. There was no dramatic soundtrack, no cinematic turning point. Just small, sacred moments where I allowed myself to be a person again instead of a machine. A moment where I said, "I'm not okay," and didn't apologize. A moment where I admitted, "I don't know who I am right now," and didn't flinch. A moment where I asked for help and let it come. And what I discovered is this: sometimes the version of you that almost didn't make it becomes the most honest, most awake, most compassionate version you've ever known. She's the one who stopped pretending. She's the one who asked the hard questions. She's the one who stopped living for approval and started living for truth. And while she might not smile as easily, while she might carry a softness that wasn't there before, she also carries wisdom and a tenderness for other people's pain that only survivors know how to hold. If you're there right now, sitting on your own bathroom floor, feeling like you can't take another breath in a life that doesn't fit, please hear me when I say this. You don't need a 5-year plan. You just need to tell the truth to yourself. That's how the healing begins. And no matter how lost you feel, no matter how far gone you think you are, the part of you that wants more, that aches for change, that still whispers, "There has to be another way," that part of you is still alive. And that means hope is, too. These days, I find myself sitting in quiet moments, on long drives in early mornings before the world wakes up, in the middle of a deep breath, thinking about all the different versions of me I've been. The loud ones, the quiet ones, the terrified, brave, awkward, beautiful, bitter, hopeful ones. And I don't want to get rid of them anymore. I used to. I used to look back at who I was and cringe. I used to want to delete chapters of my story, rewrite scenes where I was too needy, too naive, too loud, too soft, too trusting. But now I see them differently. Now, I see them as sacred echoes, versions of me that did the best they could with what they knew. They weren't mistakes. They were necessary. They were me. There was a time I thought healing meant erasing all those parts of myself. That if I just read enough books, did enough inner work, journaled hard enough, meditated long enough, I could scrub the shame out of my history. But healing isn't about erasure. It's about integration. It's looking at the girl who loved too hard and saying, "You were never too much." It's holding the woman who tolerated too little and whispering, "You deserved more." It's embracing the version of yourself who gave up and saying, even in that surrender, you were worthy. Psychologically, this is known as self-reconciliation. It's the process of reclaiming the fragmented parts of your identity you once exiled in order to survive, to be accepted, to be loved. It's bringing them home. Because the truth is, we are made of layers. We are built from all the lives we've ever lived. Not one of them defines us completely, but none of them can be erased without also erasing something beautiful, something human. I think of the girl who used to stare out classroom windows, dreaming of a life that felt more true. The teenager who wrapped herself in armor, believing that numbness was strength. The woman who lost herself trying to be everything for everyone. The version of me who almost gave up, and the one who chose, however shakily, to keep going. They're all still here, not haunting me but holding me, not pulling me back but reminding me how far I've come. And the self I'm becoming, she doesn't need to be flawless. She doesn't need to be invulnerable or impressive or understood by everyone. She just needs to be honest. She needs to be present. She needs to know that becoming isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. We return to old wounds with new eyes. We circle back not because we've failed, but because we're ready to love those places deeper. This version of me is softer. Not because life got easier, but because I stopped needing to prove how strong I was. This version of me holds boundaries, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. This version of me rests, not out of laziness, but because she finally believes she's allowed to. And the most beautiful thing is I'm not becoming someone new. I'm becoming more me, with all the others still inside. So if you're trying to figure out who you are, if you're sorting through old selves like memories in a box, you don't need to pick just one. You don't have to disown who you were to become who you're meant to be. Let them come with you. Because every version of you carried something sacred. A lesson, a survival, a light, a scar, a truth. And none of it was wasted. You don't have to be proud of every moment, but you can honor them. You can say she tried, she grew, she mattered. And now, she gets to rest, because you're here, and you're not starting over, you're continuing. With eyes open, heart steady, and all the lives you've ever lived walking beside you. So if you're out there feeling fractured, lost in the memory of who you used to be, this is your invitation to stop chasing a version of yourself that never had all the information. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. And becoming is messy, sacred, nonlinear work. All the lives we ever lived. They made this moment possible. And that is more than enough.